Welcome to our studio, Engineer. Uko mzima?
Niko mzima kabisa.
Kabisa. For the time that you've been serving as the Executive Director hapo kwa Electricity Consumers Society of Kenya, and also as a stakeholder in the power sector, what's your situation? What's your take? What's your overall position when it comes to power in this country?
Power in this country, I think we have been doing well. The only problem we have had is that information to consumers has not been very timely.
No.
And then, of course, the input by the consumer, as much as we are saying that there is public participation, has not been considered seriously. It has been a very big downfall, or I would rather say, Kenya Power themselves, they know they have a job to do to inform consumers, because it's good to inform your customers of what is happening, and also inform them of your product, because it looks complicated, because right now we have 15 tariffs.
Yes.
Most of the consumers don't even know which tariff they are in. Other things are like, how do they cost the power? What comes into play when they have to determine the cost of power?
Yes.
That particular bit is that, again, Kenya Power are not very keen to inform their consumers on what happens. So as a result, as a civil society organization, we came up and decided that no, we have to keep on telling people what they need to know, because Kenya Power are not trying to do that. EPRA themselves are also supposed to be protecting consumers. They have not also been doing that. The only person left to tell us what is happening in power is the president. And sometimes his statements are not very accurate, because, of course, we know he's not an engineer. And also we know that he has people he has employed in Kenya Power, be it the MD Kenya Power or even the board. They should come out and tell us. He also has a Director General in EPRA. And those are the people who should come and tell us about what is happening with power, if there is rationing or if there is no rationing. But now, because they are not doing that, we have come out as a civil society and informed consumers of the actual position. Our position is that there is no rationing or there is no load shedding that is happening, unless there is a plan to do the same. But even as they are saying they would be having a plan to do that, we of course know that the capacity we have in the country, we have not reached that point that is very critical. It might reach that point maybe 2-3 years to come, if industrialization is going to really kick off, which I even doubt. But again, much as we are saying that we have enough power and there is no industrialization, that means the only people driving consumption are the ordinary or domestic consumers, and those are bulbs and the showers and the like. If it is something to drive a motor, I do not see a lot of people trying to invest in that field. But then let's agree that even if we would have seen, what I have seen as a problem in this country is that there is not much planning. And that planning is when you know that come to 2027, the power is not going to be enough in this country. And so if it's going to take about 5 years or 10 years to build a power source like a dam, didn't you know that? How comes you are coming to know about it around 1 year to the time we are going to crisis? And then number two, what are the measures that would be put, or what are the sources of power that would come into play so urgently, so that we don't suffer what we are being told is load shedding or the impending load shedding. Now, if building a dam would take 7 years or 10 years, if solar would not solve, because we also know that solar could be assembled a bit quick, maybe even take a year to assemble. But then we are saying solar itself, it's not going to sort out our problems, because we have seen that our problem, as per the president's statement, is going to be between 5 to 10 p.m. That time we know the sun has gone down, so there is nothing much solar can do. We also, of course, know that solar storage is not sometimes very economical. And if it is, why hasn't Kenya Power invested in that? Why hasn't Kenigen invested in that? Because we know those two do not have a single power source that comes from solar. Solar only comes from in fact, the Garissa solar, which is 50 megawatt, have been invested by Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Corporation. Other solar sources are private investors. In Malindi, we have others in Eldoret. Even those investors have not found it economical to store solar power so that it can be used at night. So as a result, we are also saying the only option that we've been left with currently is to import or install diesel generators. Every time you have a diesel generation, you have to add between 3 shillings to 6 shillings. And in fact, it has even gone to 8.2 shillings in March of 2023. So we know that is going to make the cost of power even more expensive. So if there has been a plan in this country, then the people who would have seen this problem you're having should have come and mentioned about it around 2018, 2017. That's the time they should have said, okay, we can already foresee that in 2026, 2027, we are likely to have crisis and we are likely to have load shedding. So we need to do a plan so that about those 7 years or 8 years coming, we will not have a problem. And why I am saying that planning has not been done in the country is because this demand did not shoot last year or this year. It has been shooting. You find that in 2010, the demand was growing. It came to 1,700, came to 1,800, like that. We are now approaching around 2,400 megawatt out of the possible or the maximum, which would be 3,300. And when I mentioned that 300, some people ask if we are at 23, and then we are saying that we have a capacity of 3,300. Why do we have a problem? We really have a problem because when we are talking about 3,300 megawatt is inclusive of the capacity of, for example, 310 megawatt in Lake Turkana wind turbine. And you see that capacity of 310 would only be available if there is no turbine that would be in service. And then if the wind would be blowing at around 12 meters per second, which again is not possible to be consistently generating that. So as a result, the 310 we'd be talking about would be giving around 200 megawatt. Okay, so the 3,300 has been lowered a little bit. Then when we talk of like we have the Kamburu Dam, the installed capacity of like say like 100 megawatt, that would consider if we have water consistently at a given volume, which again is not also possible. So you'll find that again, that will deliver about 50% of its capacity. So when you cut kidogo kidogo, that is 200 will come to around 2,500 or 2,600. So indeed, yes, there is that concern, but we have only managed to hit 2,400 according to KenGen records, and they were very proud that they managed to deliver that. So when the president talks of that 2,300 is a problem, we need to do rationing, I still don't think that we are yet there.
And you see, these are quite technical terms, the megawatts and the load shading and rationing. The ordinary mwananchi wants to understand, why don't we have a sustainable power supply in our households and in our businesses? Because we know, of course, Kenya's renewable energy mix is made up of geothermal, steam from underground, right? We have hydroelectricity, which is basically power generated by forces of water. We have wind and we have solar. And they will ask themselves, solar is available in the country throughout the year.
But not throughout the day.
We have wind that cannot be compared maybe to anything else in this country. I mean, we are not lacking water. Like when it pours heavily, we have waters and dams, all the 7 forks and everything, and we have geothermal. Why is it that we are still in this century talking about some parts of the country being told that you will not be having power because we cannot supply enough? So much so that we have to import power from neighboring countries. Very briefly and very like a layman kind of a thing.
Thank you very much. Indeed, we have all those natural resources that would support the generation of power, but they, other than just blowing, the wind blowing, you expect to have a turbine that would be blown to generate power. Much as we would have too much water, you of course require a turbine. Now, the plan to install turbines is what has not been there. Be it even if it is solar. I mean, solar, we have talked about it and said that yes, you also need panels. But the problem that we are having currently is that solar would not solve that unless you do some storage. So we have all the, in fact, even geothermal, we have only harnessed around 900 megawatt. And our geothermal potential in the country is actually around 10,000 megawatt. So why are we not harnessing that? There are two things. One is the plan by the government or whoever would be doing the planning, that they have decided if we inject too much power from geothermal, we will not be having power from diesel generators where the oil marketing companies owned by cartels will not be able to supply power there. So it is a plan for some crisis so that they can bring in their own interest in the business.
I see.
Yes.
So, to make them understand,
yes.
is that also we have what we call diesel-generated power.
Yeah.
In technical terms, you normally call that?
It's called, actually it's diesel-generated power.
Yeah, but there's a term we normally use, meaning that diesel is used to run generators, and generators produce the power.
Yeah.
And these generators, are they owned by government, or are they owned by individuals?
Thank you. I think the term you are looking for is independent power producers, or IPPs. But of course, we have even IPPs that are solar owned. We have independent power producers that use water and all that. But let me come to the independent power producers that use diesel. We normally have 5. That would be called active. We have 2 in Mombasa. We have Rabai, that is owned by a private investor. And then we have one that is owned by KenGen, which is Kipevu 3. We had 2 others. One was Kipevu 1, owned by KenGen. The contract ended after 20 years. And then we have another one that was called Kipevu 2, owned by Savo Power. Again, that contract ended in around September of 2021. Then in Nairobi, we have 4. We have Triumph Power, we have Thika Power, we have Gulf Power, and Ibera Africa. Now, all those I have named in Nairobi are privately owned. Those people like generating power using diesel, because when you sell diesel to those plants, of course you make money, and there is no much public participation that is done on how much the diesel would cost. For example, I will tell you that there are even parts of the country that receive diesel at a cost of more than 300 shillings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you see, you've never understood, or you've never been told that that is the cost of the diesel to those plants. So much as you are asking whether those are owned by government, yes, I would say you have about 40 of them owned by government, but those are small ones. Like, for example, Mandela. Yeah. Mandela, or even Kakuma, or other areas, or Elwak. You realize that sometimes it's not economical to transmit power from Orkaria to go and take it to Mandera, and then Mandera will only consume about 50,000 Kenya shillings per month. You see, the investment would be too much. So sometimes they decide that let's just put a standby generator, because we have our chief there, we have a DO who needs to do photocopying and printing and also security. So sometimes they do install like that. So the government have owned other ones. Is the one that owns that kind of standalone generators. They are called off-grid generators.
Off-grid, the thermal power.
Yes, but they only contribute around 27.7 megawatt of the whole generation. So it's not cause for worry. The only challenge is, and sometimes when they're having a problem with the generator, the outage could go as long as even months. Yeah. So those are called off-grid. But remember, we also pay for them, because the cost of power they have consumed will be distributed among all the consumers, including those ones who are in Nairobi, who are in Mombasa. Because if we end up charging those people, they will be paying more than us who are in Nairobi. And those who in Mombasa would be perhaps paying relatively on average, because again they are also using diesel. So what the government does, or what Kenya Power does, is to distribute the cost to all the consumers.
That's where the fuel cost comes in.
That's why the fuel cost charge, fuel cost charge component of the bill comes there. They redistribute. There is a certain formula they normally use, and we also use. The only challenge you have had is that formula has not been followed. So at one point when we were talking about in 2023, around February, we had identified that for the last 5 years, they have taken more than 70 billion Kenya shillings, which is unwarranted, because the formula was talking of less. They should have collected less. And to complement that, the Auditor General also commented and said that the same amount is also not being explained of who took it. So sometimes we end up that we pay too much money to through our bills. It's collected by Kenya Power, but then when it goes to paying the fuel that has been consumed by, for example, Kipevu 3 is much less. So Nancy Gathungu was asking, where do we take the excess? And of course, you expect that it's normally taken by the oil marketing companies, and in simple terms, in Kenya, those are the cartels.
The cartels. And so you're saying it's done purposely, and it's done intentionally, that we interrupt power supply so that the generators can keep running, so that the cartels can benefit.
Yes, exactly. So that is a plan. When you hear that nobody planned that we would be having a shortage of power in 2025, 2026, 2027, they had already foreseen that there is a quick fix. And remember also, there are several generators, or thermal generators, that are actually expiring around this time. I told you we have expired 2. There is Muhoroni gas turbine, which had expired last year. But then it was brought back into the system because, again, the power supply in Kisumu and those regions had a problem. So you can already see people knew that this Muhoroni gas turbine is going to expire its contract. But nobody had a plan. So when they decided to do a plan, they were talking of that we need to do Chemosit line where Adani was coming in. You see, most of those things, they create an emergency or some crisis such that when they are telling you that we have a problem, you will be under some stress that, oh, we don't have power, this we must do. And that's why you even heard that when the president was saying that we need to do a dam in the lower Tana of 1,000 megawatt, the dam is going to take about 10 years.
To build.
Yes. But he's already saying in 2025 that we have a problem. Is that the dam that is coming to sort out our problems? No. So then you have to ask, now that we have a crisis, Mr. President, and you have a dam that we can agree that you take up this money and you can build the dam, how is our problem going to end? You realize that they must bring in a thermal generator or a diesel-powered station. And that has been our problem as consumers advocates.
Most parts of the country are blessed to have solar energy. But then again, there is a time back when the government actually put some conditions before you install solar panels in your house. You need to get government approval, and also there is a tax that's related to solar equipment. Is that equally done intentionally, or if we were just to actually zero rate or maybe remove tax in totality for solar, we will have most Kenyans actually benefiting from natural power sources as opposed to relying on a government which, as you say, intentionally creates a crisis for a section of the individuals to benefit.
Solar power is not very reliable without storage. Because I would say, of course, we utilize a lot of solar because during the day, you don't need a bulb or you don't need security light. But when it comes to harnessing that energy to be used at night, that has been a challenge to most of the people. Because one, you will need to do some battery storage. Those batteries, you will have to, if you don't get some very good batteries, let me say the life expectancy or the lifetime of a battery would be about 4 to 7 years. When you look at the much that you have saved from Kenya Power, for you to use the batteries and the solar, you realize that the payback period would be about 7 years for you to recover the money that you would have paid to Kenya Power. But within that 7 years, you realize that you need to replace the batteries. And sometimes the solar is also aging, the panels and all that. So sometimes you realize that, this kind of an investment I'm putting, I better use Kenya Power. That is one of the issues that have discouraged consumers too much. But in industry, most of the industries that are consuming power during the day, of course, are benefiting quite a lot. I think the payback period will be about 4 to 5 years based on the usage. But at night for domestic consumers, I've not seen that very applicable. And in our own study, we've seen that solar could only be useful where you are totally off grid. You don't have power. That is when solar becomes important. But if you have a Kenya Power line running around your area,
so you'd rather use the national grid as opposed to going to solar.
The economics suggests that you may not benefit too much.
And is it because maybe the prices of the solar power components are very high, or if they were to be reduced, maybe if tax was to be considered, tax rebates and everything of that sort, would it make it easier? Because I think it's gonna be just a one-off cost. That is the installation cost, and after that there is nothing else unless maintenance, which rarely does occur, right?
Actually, we wouldn't say that after that there is no cost, because I've said that after about 4 or 5 years you need to replace the batteries, and you realize that if that is a problem you'll be having all the time, then the best would be to connect to Kenya Power. But then even with the cost, like for example, the cost per watt for solar generally comes to around 100 shillings. 100 shillings per watt. Now, remember, if your battery would, if your power, say you are using about a bulb of 60 watts. 60 watt, that means you need a solar of around 6,000 shillings. And that is one bulb. So 6,000 would be the installation for solar without a battery. Now, if you look at your total load for the house, you realize that it could come, let me mention the best installation that will be done in your house based on how Patrick uses power. The best would be to do 7.5 kilowatt, sorry. 7.5 kilowatt in your house is going to cost around 600,000.
600,000.
That is the best with some batteries. So and some people have done the same. Even for me, the installation that I am planning to do is supposed to be 10 kilowatt, and that is going to at a cost of around 763,000. And those are the quotations that I've gotten. But
so if it's just a standard house, maybe 3-4 bedroom with a wife and kids and a house help and stuff like that.
That would be 5 kilowatt. 5 kilowatt would go to around 450 to 500,000 based on the
solar installation.
So is quite expensive. And so you realize, for example, I was doing some mathematics and I realized that if I use the 700,000 to buy tokens, the tokens would last for 13 years. You get? They would last for 13 years.
So the economy is favors
it favors Kenya Power. Yes.
But the problem is that the reliability again.
The reliability.
So going forward,
yes,
as an expert in this sector,
yeah,
and as an advocate for consumer rights when it comes to electricity consumption,
yes,
what do you think is the way forward? What's the solution that we need to look at as a country if we were to actually deal with matters of electricity once and for all?
I think what you're asking me is to advise as the person who is in charge of power in the country, and so that is what I will do, because the people, of course, you know the people in power.
Yeah.
That is the CS, the PS. It's not they don't make very permanent policies, because as you do this, like when we had Davis Churchill, what he had done or what he had planned, Opio and I came, and they just decided to move on with what had been suggested. Mm-hmm. Then you realize, is it the mind of the CS or is it another think tank somewhere that is advising these people to talk about? So, but then that is the time we realize that actually power issues are not being taken very serious in the country. But now, if you ask me what we need to do as an expert, one, when we had President Uhuru Kenyatta in government, you realized every time he used to go to Orkaria Geothermal and say, oh, we've been injected 280 megawatts of Orkaria 1 additional unit. Then you would realize again he has come, they have added another little bit, like 80, like that. What I think we need to do as a country, we don't need to struggle too much about dams and all that. We've already said that the geothermal potential in the country is about 10,000 megawatts.
10,000. We're only doing about 1,000.
We are only doing about 1,000. There is no harm in adding slowly by slowly. Every year we keep on adding like 100, 200, 100, 200, because that is also the growth that we are. That is the growth in demand in the country. There is a time we were at 1,200. Right now we are at 2,300. Once we eject like 200, we would be at an extra 3,600 that we would comfortably do around 2,700 if that demand comes through. So we keep on doing that, and then we also keep on eliminating the diesel generators. One, you realize that geothermal is not like hydroelectric, because hydroelectric depends on the water, isn't it? And then wind depends on the environment, the wind. Solar depends again on the sunshine, which is not very favorable around May, June, July, thereabout. But geothermal, whether there is darkness, whether there is rain, whether it is dry, geothermal is geothermal. It's consistent. It's just like the diesel generators where you are the one to guide on how much do you want anytime. I thought that as in Kenya, that is very reliable. And you realize that there are not many countries in Africa who have that geothermal power. So why is Kenya struggling with other sources of power when geothermal is still there? It has never disappointed. Every time you ukitoboa geothermal, you get your steam. Why would you want to go do other things that would take too many years? So I think it is intentional by the government not to harness the energy from geothermal, but it is actually there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you think if we continue tapping into geothermal and give ourselves a period of 10 years, adding about 200 megawatts per year, we will be making steps in the right direction.
Yes. And that is actually a document that people should be told that we have planned to do this year. Let's not be told like we need like a total of 10,000 megawatt, and so we need 1.2 trillion. One data center requires 1,000 megawatt. Those are not the statements we would want. We would want a statement of saying that we have a plan to generate about 200 megawatt from geothermal by the end of 2026. And then he comes and says, okay, we are in 2026 December. this is the power I promised. And then this year again, in 2027, we are planning to do this. And then they inject the same. Nobody will complain of power in the country. Yes.
And right now, geothermal is accounting about 45% of Kenya's energy.
Of the Kenya's generation, yes. It's giving us around 4 billion tokens, 4 billion kilowatt hours. Not billion, 400 million. Because the country uses around 1.2 billion tokens. The one you use 10, 20 or 50.
Yes.
If you collectively do that, considering even the losses that we have in the lines, we normally generate around 1.2 billion. So geothermal is giving us around 450 million per year. Yes, that's around 45%.
And are we able to solely rely on geothermal as a nation? Because if we look at industry data, you realize that Kenya actually leads in geothermal energy production in Africa.
Yes.
And has set ambitious targets for renewable energy, aiming at about 100% renewable electricity generation. Is it something that is possible, or are we too ambitious?
Currently we are doing around 92% of renewable energy. When we talk of renewable energy, we are considering that solar, hydro, geothermal, all that is pure or is clean energy. Now, what is not renewable is the diesel plants. And you realize the diesel plants are giving us around about 75 million kilowatt hours or tokens a month. That's the bit that we are saying is around 8% that is not clean energy. So it is possible actually to go to 100%. But again, if you listen to experts who are also misleading, they will tell you that geothermal cannot be used to pick loads in the evening. So we need these diesel generators in the evening. Because the loads have peaked sharply, and we need some startup mechanism that is so quick so that people do not suffer. But even if you go to other countries, including Iceland and Greenland, you realize that because the geothermal is closer to the ground, so they harness that a lot. There are technologies where you can use geothermal to start up on such loads. But basically, when you ask those people around Kenya Power, they will tell you that it's not possible to use geothermal entirely because it is used as base load, or the load that, the base load is the load that would be used as a minimum in the country. So that is what you allocate to geothermal. And then the others you keep on picking and using diesel generators to start up, which is okay, but then we don't need to again use entirely the diesel.
Kenya electricity access rate is relatively high compared to many other African countries, and the World Bank just the other day indicated the programs that they've been running to increase access from 25 to 75%, connecting about 4.6 million households, benefiting 18 million Kenyans. But then again, if you go deeper into it, you realize that affordability is a problem, with electricity prices in Kenya being amongst the highest in Africa.
First of all, Kenya connectivity is approaching around 77%. Connectivity means the number of households or meters. We count, Kenya Power counts their consumers in terms of meters. For example, you have a meter, 1 meter around here in Royal Media, one Kenya Power meter. They will count that as one client, regardless of the number of people. So now, much as we are 55 million Kenyans, the total number of meters that have been connected are around 9.5 million. 9.5 million.
In the entire country?
In the entire country. That looks like that is now what is approaching 77%. My worry is that all those are users. You need to use energy to generate income. What we are doing and the connectivities we are talking about are individual people who are actually the end users of electricity, where you use electricity to light up your house to sleep. You're not making money. And as opposed to other developed countries where energy is used to convert or to earn a livelihood. There are some few people who, of course, have got like welding machines in the rural areas, and they have some posho mills or such. Those are the people converting that energy into, they're injecting back to the economy. But the biggest population of Kenyans, what we are talking about 77%, is actually people who just
use power to power their lives.
They use power inefficiently. In a way, they do not get just talk of maybe you used that to shower to come to work.
Yeah.
That is the best they would explain.
Or to cook a meal,
yes,
to get energy to come to work.
Yes, basically that is a wrong approach of consumption of power, as opposed to developed countries. If we would be talking of how much connectivity has been done to the industry, we would be talking of, yes, now that is something. But you see, even what you are talking about, the study by, I think, World Bank, they are talking of Kenyans, individual Kenyans. So you are not looking at how that money, it is actually going into removing money from the pockets of Kenyans. And that bit of that, whether it's going to be affordable, it's what we push for. And we still hope that there is one leader who will come and understand that Kenya is actually paying a lot in terms of cost of power. Actually, it's only Cape Verde and Mali who are ahead of Kenya in terms of the cost of power. In the whole of...
so we are number 3.
We are number 3.
In terms of the expensive nature
yes.
of electricity.
The cost of power, we are number 3 in Africa. And I will explain Mali is a bit rugged. In fact, those few people who get power, because there is no connectivity. I think the connectivity there is around 16%.
Yeah.
When you go to Cape Verde, of course, it's almost 100% powered. Those are islands. And those islands are, I think, they cannot be powered by hydroelectric.
Yeah.
So they normally have their own standby generators. And so it has to be expensive to produce power. So it is also expensive to buy the cost in terms of the cost of power. But now when you come to Kenya, where we are saying that about 92% is renewable, what is making the cost of power that expensive? And you realize that the cost of power, actually, we normally have 8 components. Only one is what goes into really the business of power, because
we have energy charge.
Yes.
Okay.
That is now the base tariff, yes.
We have the fuel cost charge.
That goes to pay the diesel generators, the cartels.
Even if the power that we are using did not come from diesel, it's distributed.
Yeah, it's distributed, yes. Because sometimes it could be 40 shillings to generate one.
We have a foreign exchange rate, adjustment.
Now, I will explain that a bit. Foreign exchange rate is when we were trying to sign contract with the people who are independent power producers, or IPPs. They said that you cannot sign this cost. You cannot sign to be paying back our power in terms of Kenya shillings, because we have taken our loans with foreign currency.
Yes.
So now that time they signed, the cost or the dollar exchange rate was like 60 shillings. Today is 130. So the difference of 70 shillings, that is what we call forex. So we keep on paying them.
We keep paying.
Yes.
Inflation adjustment.
Inflation is generally, I think inflation is a bit understandable, because it's even guided by World Bank. It's normally adjusted once per every 6 months.
Yes. We have the EPRA levy.
EPRA is one of the very contentious kind of a pay, because why are Kenyans paying EPRA when EPRA is actually appointed by the government?
Yeah, it's a charge for the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority.
Yeah, that we don't need to be regulated, because we have realized we are not benefiting. They have been charged expensively, and that if that is what is regulation, that is when we are saying that we are not getting any help from
and
EPRA.
It's normally charged at
it's 8 cents.
Hour.
8 cents per kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
Yes. And that is around, currently I think is coming to around 80 million per month.
So you're of the position that we shouldn't be paying this.
We shouldn't be paying, because we have VAT on electricity. We should go into paying the other agencies that are contributing.
So it's like double taxation.
Yes, it's double.
So that's the EPRA levy.
Yes.
We have the WARMA levy.
WARMA, again, let me tell you something about WARMA. WARMA is the Water Resource Authority. They normally charge us money because they are maintaining the catchment. Let me tell you what catchment is. Catchment is the river flow system that, for example, goes to Tana River.
Yeah.
That comes from the Aberdares and, for example, Mount Kenya, right? So then it passes through rice farms for it to find, and those rice farms are private. So when you are charged by WARMA or Water Resource Authority, they are saying that they are in charge of ensuring that that water is available. If you pay them, like now, we normally pay them around 20 million shillings. Okay, so if you ask them what do they do with the 20 million, in fact they were trying to propose we come from 20 million to 400 million per month for them to provide more water. Unless they are going to add fertilizers in the forest, what else would they be doing that money? That is what WRA or WARMA.
Yeah, a contribution to the Water Resources Authority, particularly for electricity generated from hydropower, right?
Yeah.
And then we have the REP levy.
Rural Electrification Program levy is supposed to subsidize when you want to be connected back in the countryside. They are supposed to subsidize that. So we contribute every month. That's like 3 billion per month.
With the hope that people
will be connected at a cheaper price in the countryside. But they keep on getting that money every month. But we also noted that it's normally collected and goes to the treasury, so it doesn't find a way to rural electrification program. The department.
And then finally, we do pay value-added tax.
Value-added tax is one of the areas that the government thinks that it has a right to collect VAT and not explain to Kenyans where it is going to, because that is the levy. Or that is a tax that should go into paying EPRA, WARMA, and those other agencies. Yeah. For example, even when you need to be connected to power, perhaps you need to be subsidized based on the VAT.
Yeah.
But you realize that you keep on paying all that. Every component in electricity, you have to pay it separately.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to pay it separately.
Okay. And there is a gentleman here who wants to borrow your brains a bit. He says, good morning, Igunza. Who's this guy in studio, Bana? I have one question for that great man. Will energy in future be affected either way, but he says negatively, by artificial intelligence? How can we evade, or maybe how can we make sure that we take advantage of AI going forward?
I think the gentleman is asking basically whether it could be two ways. One, we need to plan for the AI because it consumes a lot of power. But even we have other countries that are a bit more developed, like the US. Let's not talk of that we need a whole 1,000 megawatts to do a data center, because I believe that is where AI is coming in, and that is how it would consume power. So basically, I think we need to have that plan. It could affect us if we don't plan well, because we need to power AI. But again, in terms of usage, AI, of course, is supposed to even explain to us, if you use ChatGPT, on how do you need to plan as a country. For example, if we are going to be having a demand, for example, if you just key in the demand for the country for the last 10 years, which we have, that data we do have, you could use AI to predict to you on how much would you need by year 2032, and with all these power sources that would come into play based on the plan by the government, if in case they have any plan, you would be able to see whether it is a good plan or we need to change our course. Yes.
Amazing, Kabisa. As we wind up, engineer, tell us, if we do not actually get right our power issue, what kind of future are we looking at as a nation, especially on matters industrialization, development, and also competing in the global space?
I think that question would be even very easy to use the South Africa issue. They didn't do a very good plan for the power generation. Ever since they got independence in 1990, they mismanaged the maintenance of the plants because they were coal-powered. They didn't know that they need to keep regular maintenance. So they found themselves in a crisis where they had an installed demand of 50,000 megawatt, but when it reached to around this time, they could only maybe supply about 30,000 megawatts. So they had to do load shedding and rationing. That affects the economy too much, because you might be shutting off an industry so that you can power the people around. So it becomes some crisis. So what we are facing right now is that if we have crisis in power, there are some regions which will be affected. They will say that power, land on that area, on that bit of Rimuru Deya somewhere, land is cheap, because when we are talking about rationing, that is the first area they consider that is not very, doesn't contribute to the economy. When people also realize that actually where you have industries, you cannot have rationing, or there is no load shedding, you will find the people trying to settle their residential houses around there. So it could affect the distribution of the country's settlement if we don't have some very good power or a good plan. But even before we reach there of thinking that what could go wrong, it is in fact it is wrong to think that things would go wrong when we are actually talking as a civil society and even advising the government. It will come to a time when we will say that it is the consumers who would be actually thinking or voting or suggesting on who should lead in power matters. Because the people who are brought there, we have not had them having an independent thinking from the government. Because even when during the Kibaki times, we used to hear, if it is, she was called Professor Wangari Maathai. She would make a declaration that she doesn't want a lot of input from the president. Nowadays, that is not what happens. When the CS for energy talks about something, it has to be cleared by the president, and the president might be, he is not the one actually clearing. You might actually understand that maybe it is Oscar Sudi who is going to be asked about what will happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.